Welcome to Psychology of Humans. Loneliness is one of the most widespread emotional experiences on the planet, yet it's also one of the most misunderstood. We often think loneliness means being physically alone, but the truth is far more complex. You can sit in a crowded and feel invisible. You can live with a partner and still feel totally disconnected. Loneliness isn't about the number of people around you, it's about the quality of the emotional connections you have. In today's video, we're diving deep into the psychology of loneliness. We'll explore what loneliness actually is, why it affects the brain so strongly, how it can physically change your health, and most importantly, how you can begin to break the cycle. This isn't surface-level self-help. This is the science, the psychology, and the lived human experience behind one of the most powerful feelings we deal with. Let's begin. Loneliness is not simply the absence of people. It's the absence of meaningful connection. It happens when there's a gap between the relationships we want and the relationships we feel we have. That gap creates emotional distress, and the bigger the gap, the deeper the loneliness. Psychologists recognize 3 different types of loneliness. The first is emotional loneliness, missing one deep, trusted, intimate connection. The second is social loneliness, lacking a wider circle of friends, peers, or a sense of community. And the third is existential loneliness, the feeling that no one truly understands you, or that you are fundamentally separate from the world. All 3 types can affect anyone, at any age, at any point in life. What's surprising is that loneliness is not always caused by isolation. Some people isolate themselves because they are lonely. Others become lonely even while surrounded by people because the relationships they have don't feel genuine, supportive, or mutual. The key point is this: loneliness is not about being alone. It's about feeling alone. Scientists have discovered that loneliness lights up the same part of the brain, activated by physical pain. This is why loneliness hurts. The brain interprets disconnection as a threat, just like hunger, thirst, or injury. Humans evolved to survive in groups, so when connection breaks down, the brain sends a warning signal: something is wrong. You need people. This is also why chronic loneliness can have real physical consequences. Research shows it increases stress hormones, weakens the immune system, disrupts sleep, and even shortens lifespan. In fact, long-term loneliness is considered as dangerous as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. It's not just an emotion, it's a health issue. So why does loneliness happen? Sometimes it's triggered by change. Moving to a new city, ending a relationship, starting a new job, or losing someone important. Sometimes it builds slowly, through years of surface-level interactions that never develop into deep connections. And sometimes it comes from within, from low self-worth, social anxiety, or the belief that people wouldn't understand you even if you tried. One of the most common causes of modern loneliness is what psychologists call crowded isolation. This is when someone is technically connected to hundreds of people online, yet feels emotionally disconnected from everyone. We scroll through feeds, we message people, we join group chats. But there's no real emotional intimacy, no genuine vulnerability, and no deep human presence. It is connection without closeness. Another major factor is comparison. When you see other people posting pictures with friends, partners, families, or groups, your brain makes a subconscious judgment: everyone else is connecting better than I am. This deepens the gap between the relationships you want and the ones you feel you have, intensifying loneliness. Let's talk about something important. Loneliness does not mean you are unlikable, unwanted, or unworthy. Loneliness is a signal, not a verdict. It's the brain's way of telling you that you need deeper, more meaningful connections. Nothing about loneliness makes you broken, it makes you human. So how do you break the cycle? How do you climb out of loneliness when it feels like the isolation itself makes it harder to connect? The first step is understanding that loneliness changes your thinking. When people feel lonely, they become more cautious, more guarded, more defensive. They expect rejection, they expect people to judge them, and they expect conversations to fail. This becomes a self-fulfilling cycle. The brain's protective instincts actually make connection harder. But the good news is this: simply understanding the cycle is the beginning of breaking it. Loneliness wants you to withdraw, but growth requires you to gently step forward. The next step is to reconnect with yourself. Loneliness often creates a sense of internal disconnection from your own interests, emotions, and identity. When you reconnect with activities that feel meaningful, you start rebuilding the foundation of your self-worth. And when your sense of worth increases, your openness to connection increases too. Small social steps are another powerful approach. You don't need to suddenly make 10 new friends. Even brief, positive interactions, a short conversation, a shared laugh, or a friendly moment begin rewiring the brain. These micro-connections signal safety, they soften the brain's fear response. They make deeper relationships easier later. Another helpful practice is building consistency. People bond through repeated exposure. You don't need perfect confidence, you need presence. Even showing up to the same place at the same time, week after week, increases your chances of forming real connections. Humans trust what is familiar. Let's talk about vulnerability. Loneliness often makes people hide the very emotions that would help others understand them. You don't need to tell your life story. Vulnerability can be simple: a small truth, a small fear, a small hope. Emotional openness, even in small amounts, is the key that unlocks genuine connection. There is also value in recognizing who drains you and who nourishes you. Not everyone is meant to be part of your circle. Depth is more important than quantity. A single genuine connection can reduce loneliness more effectively than 100 surface-level relationships. An important point is accepting that connection takes time. Loneliness creates urgency, a sense of desperation to feel close to someone immediately. But meaningful relationships grow slowly. Think of connection like a plant. You cannot force it to grow in one day, but you can create the conditions that allow it to grow over time. Another useful perspective. Loneliness sometimes appears in your life when you are transitioning to a stronger version of yourself. Old connections fade. New ones haven't formed yet. It feels empty. But this space is not a failure. It's a foundation, a necessary clearing for the people who will matter in your future. When you understand loneliness as a stage, not a permanent state, you start to gain control. You stop fighting the emotion and start listening to it. You ask yourself, what kind of connection am I actually craving? Emotional, social, meaningful? When you identify the type of loneliness, you can take the right kind of action. There's also a psychological skill called self-expansion. This means intentionally trying new experiences, hobbies, roles, or environments. Not because they guarantee connection, but because they increase the chances of meeting people who align with your values. You don't need to force friendship. You just need to be where your kind of people are. Let's talk about something deeper: loneliness and self-talk. When you feel lonely, your inner voice often becomes more negative. No one wants me. I don't belong anywhere. People won't understand me. But these are interpretations, not facts. They are emotional echoes, not objective truths. When you challenge these thoughts, even gently, you weaken loneliness's grip on your mind. One of the most important reminders is this: the people who could become meaningful in your life cannot find you if you remain hidden. You don't need to be extroverted. You don't need to be perfect. You just need to be visible in the smallest ways. A presence, a voice, a simple interaction. Connection doesn't require a dramatic effort. It requires a human moment. Let's talk about self-compassion. People who feel lonely often blame themselves. They feel embarrassment or shame. But loneliness is not a personal failure. It is a signal that you are wired for connection, and your wiring is working exactly as it should. The emotion you feel is a reminder of your humanity, not a flaw in your character. Let's explore the psychology of being alone versus feeling lonely. Being alone can be peaceful, grounding, creative, and empowering. Feeling lonely is painful, confusing, and draining. The goal is not to eliminate aloneness. The goal is to transform aloneness into solitude. Solitude is chosen. Loneliness is not. When you learn to enjoy your own presence, connection becomes something you want, not something you desperately need. Another powerful idea is that loneliness teaches you what kind of connection truly matters. You start valuing depth over attention, presence over performance, authenticity over popularity. Loneliness refines your standards. It clarifies the kind of relationships that actually heal you. So how do you move forward? You start small. You start gently. You take the pressure off. You allow connection to grow naturally. You remind yourself that the feeling of loneliness is temporary, even when it feels permanent. You remember that billions of people have felt what you are re-feeling, and many of them have found connection again. Think about this. Somewhere in the world, right now, someone is looking for a friend, a partner, or a meaningful human connection. Someone whose personality complements yours. Someone whose humor matches yours. Someone whose values align with yours. Someone who would be grateful to know you. Loneliness makes you forget that these people exist. But they do. Your future connections depend on you staying open long enough to meet them. Let's end with the core truth. Loneliness does not define you. It signals a need. It highlights a gap. It calls you toward deeper connection with yourself, with others, and with the world. You are not alone in feeling lonely. You are part of a shared human experience that touches everyone at some point in life. The moment you begin understanding loneliness, you begin healing it. And the moment you take small steps toward connection, you begin reshaping your future relationships. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe.